So we should be live now. I just need to go into Facebook and do a little tweaking.
All right. Yeah, I went to your page. Is that Enter the Dragon there on?
Yeah, there was a video from Enter the Dragon on there. Yeah. That's like one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Of course, you're being a martial artist. I'm sure you appreciate it.
Yeah.
More than I do.
Well, it's that opening line where Bruce Lee says, "Boards don't fight back." that was the key for me. It's like, you can, sell a good game with a board, but it's like, a board can't fight, can't hit back. It can't defend itself.
Good point. I'm going to share this on my page.
Yep. I'm going to do the same. How y'all doing out there? Aaron and I are just doing a little housekeeping here, just making sure that we share it out in all of the possible places to share it out. Yep. And let's see. And I keep forgetting to this all began from the 3-Chord Live, right? That was the origin of this. And we started off with a conference call, and then we started doing live stream videos, and then it just branched out in a lot of different directions. And everybody's kind of doing their own thing now, but I want to give a shout out to my sister Michelle Brown, because she and Tony Calloway are like the masterminds behind this. And so that, and then Aaron, you and I, we had been connected for a while, but the catalyst between me and you really kind of ramping up our relationship was Aaron Abke, right? And so just a couple of people I want to give a shout out to, because if it weren't for them, this wouldn't be here. And dude, this is just one of the most amazing things. This is one of the most amazing things I've ever been involved in. So, and just, being connected to you, Aaron, is like, it's just absolutely awesome, man.
Thank you, man. I'm honored. I feel the same way.
You know what? We've been told, now I don't know if you've gotten any of this from anybody, but I've been told by several people that we need to produce this like a television show. Serious. There's some people that just, they really believe in us, man.
That's awesome. Yeah, that'd be fun, wouldn't it?
It would. I mean, like, and somebody in San Diego, I think it was C. Rodriguez who's on here. I think she invited us out to San Diego to do the live stream on the beach, and that would be fucking amazing.
That would be awesome.
So anyway, I'm Derrick Day, and
I'm Aaron Tomlinson. Thanks for joining us.
Yes. And you know what? I'm just going to set this up, and then I'm going to let you knock it down, right?
All right. Yep.
Because, Aaron and I have gone through this great metamorphosis spiritually. I mean, it's a true chrysalis experience where we've transformed from wretched worms, caterpillars, into butterflies, beautiful, colorful, broad-winged, free-flying butterflies. And there are people that they are stuck in the caterpillar stage. They're stuck in the pupa stage, and they haven't experienced the metamorphosis, and they have a little bit of envy, I think, toward those who do. And so as a result, we take a lot of flack. I mean, a lot of shit from people out there that say, hey, I don't like what you're doing. You're steering people away from Jesus. You're leading people into hell, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Right. So anyway, Aaron had did a live stream on Sunday, which is really awesome, and I shared it, and then I really didn't watch any of his content for the rest of the week until early today, and he was talking about, hey, if my posts were shocking to you over the last couple of days, here's why. So when somebody like Aaron says that, I'm like, okay, what was so shocking? And so I went back and I looked, and I'm like, holy fuck, Holy fuck. Whoa. I said, okay. So I had something in mind that, we've been talking about this one thing. We've been talking about logical fallacy for the last couple of weeks. And we want to do a show on that. But,
Yeah.
but, but that has to take a back seat again because of the awesomeness of what you posted over the last couple of days. And so that, Aaron, is the setup. So go on ahead and mow them down. And before you get started, I have like a whole picture of old fashioned tonight.
Dude,
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I'm just drinking straight Maker's Mark today.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I've got my Bulleit bourbon, and that's my alcohol. And I prepared my old fashioned mix in advance. Semi homemade, semi. But I'm going to go ahead and throw a little bourbon in here, and then I'm going to throw a little bit of old fashioned in here, and then we can go. So anyway, that being said, Aaron, go ahead, take it away, man.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think where to begin with this. And I think what I would say is that one of the problems that I saw in religion, Christianity as a pastor, and even within my own life, is it's so conceptual. And we've talked about this, Derrick. What is the benefit of theology? All that kind of stuff. And I think we've used some pretty. I think we both have used.
Yeah, I think that word that you're looking for is bullshit. But please go ahead.
Mental masturbation is what I was thinking.
Oh, that was actually the better one. Yeah, thank you. It is mental, spiritual, and emotional masturbation. Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, what is the profit in just filling your head with ideas that are mostly abstract and unrelatable?
Right.
Right. And so we become full of knowledge, but it's not transforming our lives. And so most people go around with this disconnect kind of between their head and their heart, right? Or their knowledge and their experience. Prayer is a great example. We talked about this. You have this knowledge that if you just ask, you'll receive. If you ask believing in prayer, you'll receive it. If you have enough faith, you'll get it. And yet, if we're really honest, for most people, there's a disconnect there between what they believe and what they experience.
Right.
Right. So shifting out of that, deconstructing from that, and coming into some kind of a revelation of oneness, which I think is so tricky. And I'm hearing so many people, because that's the tribe I'm involved myself with, that are talking about oneness. Mm-hmm. And I had this experience, Derrick, and it wasn't, people are like, well, I want to hear about your experience, because, people want to be odd, not ODD, but AWED.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what happened? Did you, go out of body and merge with source and, tell us all about it? When in reality, what it was just a profound level of identification with hurting and suffering people on an individual level, and with people groups that are marginalized and oppressed. So I made a post, one of the posts I made, there's a famous Catholic theologian, he's considered the father of modern Western theology, Thomas Aquinas. Mm-hmm. And he wrote during a time when they were trying to reconcile reason and faith. And he wrote voluminous, just tons of stuff. And then he had some kind of mystical experience that he never, to the best of my knowledge, he never explains. If somebody out there knows what it was, I'd love to hear it, because I've never been able to find what that experience was. But after he had that experience of union with God, or whatever it was, he said, everything I've written, he actually wept and broke down. He said, everything I've written prior to this is a pile of crap, basically. And I had a sense of that in my own experience. It's like, my God. And I started thinking about it. We talk about oneness without realizing there are deep levels of pain on every level, within humanity, within nature, the animal kingdom, within the earth herself.
Mhm.
There's deep level of suffering. And even the Bible makes reference to this, right? The groaning and travailing of creation, the Apostle Paul talks about in
Yep.
Romans 8.
Yep.
So here's my premise. And I don't mean this to be offensive, and I don't mean this to sound elitist in any way, shape, or form, because unless you have the experience of it, you know, some things are caught, not taught. But if we are talking about oneness from an intellectual, conceptual, or perceptual level, even,
Mhm.
and we are not overwhelmed at times with the grief of what happens on this planet, with the grief of what happens within humanity, then without being offensive, I want to call bullshit.
Yep.
Because if you're identifying with, if you're suffering, if you're in pain, Derrick, like you've talked about losing your first wife, I imagine that had to be a horrible time in your life.
Toughest thing I ever went through.
And if you were still in grief with that, like it happened when it was fresh, right?
Mhm.
If I'm at one with you, then I'm going to be experiencing, at least on some level, if it's true oneness, I'm going to be experiencing exactly what you're experiencing. Which,
You know, let me throw something out there real quick.
Yeah.
Because in Christian circles, we talk about the atonement.
Yes.
Atonement, right? And that atonement literally is not, we what we've done is that we phonetically changed the actual pronunciation of the word. When it's not actually atone, it's not, it's at one ment.
Yeah.
It's becoming in union and stasis with another. And that whole thing, I'm saying something real quick and I'm going to get out of here. But
Fine.
if we, you know, there's a concept in Judaism, or in, I won't even say Judaism, but in Jewish culture, and it's called sitting Shiva. That when you sit Shiva with someone, you're mourning or grieving with them.
Right.
It's like when a person dies, the community comes to sit Shiva with the family that lost someone, and they don't talk. There is no conversation. There is no, it's just sitting there and being in the same space with the grief.
Right.
So I just wanted to throw that out there, because when you said, when you talk, when you were talking about at one and atonement, I wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah. So let me just throw this out. This can be a little philosophical and it's hard to grasp. And I put a post up about it. People are like, they didn't get it. And I get it.
Yeah.
But in reality, Derrick, I mean, just logically, follow this with me logically. If we want to talk about, because I had to change my language because I'm still processing this experience, and I realized I'm not explaining myself well. If we talk about oneness in the sense that we are all one, it depends on what we mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
If we mean that we are all consciousness interacting as part of a bigger picture of consciousness interacting in the universe,
Mm-hmm.
then we're one. Like my organs interact with each other, but it makes up one body. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So from the perspective of, from a certain perspective, then my body is one. But when you start breaking it down about how even just the lungs feed into the heart, which causes circulation, which gets stuff to my brain, you have all these different parts that are doing their job, right?
Yep.
So it depends on one's perspective. But true oneness is impossible to experience. It's impossible to experience because non-duality, and you hear so many people in the spiritual community talking about non-duality, experience requires duality. There has to be the experience and the experiencer.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? There has to be relationship. There has to be a reference point. And part of our problem, I think, when we go to talking about some of this stuff is defining terms. So the word define actually comes from the same root word as finite.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot define oneness. You cannot even experience oneness, because for there to be oneness, there has to be a point of reference. And for there to be a point of reference, there has to be duality.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So what are we really talking about then when we're talking about oneness and this experience of oneness? But so I decided what I was talking about probably is better explained as compassion and empathy. Compassion, the ability to suffer with someone else. So if you achieve some level of unity, so I would say unity consciousness is different than oneness consciousness, because oneness,
Yeah.
the experience of oneness is completely logically impossible.
Right.
Because the moment you have the experience, you have duality.
Yep.
And I don't know if people think some of this stuff through. I think sometimes we just get our ears tickled and we like
You know
great
something,
concepts.
you're educating the fuck out of me right now, because I've been on this oneness tip for a long time, but I also understand the whole unity thing, because there are all different organs that, like you use the human body. There are all these different organs, and these organs all operate independently. And I like to say they believe differently.
Right.
They all believe in something different, but they are united toward the life of the body.
Right.
And so the idea is you don't want to have unity, or you don't want to have oneness, because again, I've used this example with the human body, that the only time the human body is in complete agreement is when it's on the Undertaker's slab. When the body is on the Undertaker's slab, the eye says, "Hey, Foot, how you doing?" Foot says, "Man, I'm dead. How you doing?" He said, "Man, I'm dead than a motherfucker too." And that's it. Everybody's in agreement that the body is dead. But unity says, okay, I'm different. Okay, I'm having a different experience. Okay, I'm having a different belief, but I'm united on some greater consciousness. Dude, this is brilliant. Keep going.
Right. Right. So I think it's an important distinction, because again, if you experience oneness, you have no experience. And this is what the Buddhists teach, and the Hindus teach, and the Christian mystics teach, and the Kabbalists teach, and the Western mystery tradition teaches, that you cannot explain what was in the beginning, because there's no frame of reference to define it, to make it finite,
Right.
because it's infinite.
Yeah.
So the moment you start talking about it, you've edited. And this is just the nature of where we're at. So in order for there to be a relationship, and so I think what I would like to see for myself, and what I would like to maybe inspire others to do, is think about your relationships in this world. How are you relating? And I kind of got on this a little bit last week, but silence is the other side of the coin of violence.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people, because it's hard, man. Nobody wants to suffer. You don't want to suffer your own shit, much less someone else's. Let's just be honest.
Right.
I mean, there's a protective thing in us. We are wired in this body as human beings to pursue
avoid
pleasure and
right.
to avoid pain.
Yep.
So I'm going to try to avoid my own suffering as much as possible. Why would I want to have the experience of sharing in the suffering of someone else? But if we don't share in the suffering of someone else, we cannot relate well with them. And I'm meaning this on a macro level as well as a micro level. So the micro level would be, as I was saying, you're in grief, and you talk about sitting Shiva. Did I get that?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
That's on a micro level, but at some level, on a macro level, we have to be able to look at oppressed people groups.
Yep.
Who are oppressed by the misuse of power.
Yep.
And feel their suffering. And if you actually feel their suffering, you cannot stay silent.
That's right.
And otherwise, and if we do stay silent, then I have to seriously question your credentials for actually experiencing what you're talking about. Not you, Derrick, but yeah. If you're out there talking about oneness, but you have no compassion to speak out against social injustice, then I have to question your credentials to even begin to talk about oneness.
Yep.
And that's just kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. And you know, like, this is the thing that I've said this over and over and over again, that love, when you break love down to its most elemental components, it's empathy and compassion,
Yes.
right? If I say I'm one with you, but I'm unwilling to have empathy for you, then I'm lying.
Right.
I'm a liar. And if I say that I'm one with you, but I don't care about what you're going through, I don't care about what your feelings are, I don't care about how this affects you objectively, then I'm lying.
Right.
And that's the whole thing. It's like, you can't. This is the thing about unity, and I've used this example many times, that the state of Alabama and the state of California are about as ideologically different as two states will be.
True.
However, if an enemy invades the state of California, the state of Alabama is jumping up to the cause of the state of California. Now, they're totally, you know, I mean, it's almost a dichotomous relationship.
Sure.
But because of the unity of the concept of the United States of America,
Right.
one rushes to the aid of the other. And that's how unity works. So I'm completely tracking with you, because and this is a thing that has frustrated me, because when Donald Trump got elected, I'm going to pick on this fucker just because, when he got elected, you know, he was aligning himself with white supremacists, aligning himself with neo-Nazis, aligning himself with the worst ideological elements of this country, and the Christian right, and particularly for in impacting us, the grace movement. They would say, well, Derrick, don't make a big deal out of this, just give it over to Jesus and Jesus will make it right. And what you're saying is, or this is what I read from it, is that you really don't care about how I feel. You really don't care how this impacts me. You really don't care that this is dangerous to me, to my family, to my children. And then you know, the Black Lives Matter thing. Well, all lives matter. Well, yeah, all lives matter, just like all houses matter. But when one house is on fire, the fire department goes to that house and extinguishes that fire. All houses matter, but that one needs attention. You can't say that I embrace oneness when you allow something that is part of you to burn. It's just, you know, like, I'm going to share this one story, one anecdote, and Calvin Coolidge,
Yeah.
President of the United States. Calvin Coolidge had a son, Calvin Jr., who was a professional tennis player. And one day, Calvin and his younger brother decided that they used to have a tennis court on the White House lawn. And so they decided to play tennis after a family gathering. And Calvin Jr. knew that he should probably wear socks, but he decided, hey, I'm in a hurry. I want to play with my brother. And they get out there and they play. And Calvin Coolidge's son, Cal Jr., got a blister on his big toe. True story.
Okay.
He got a blister on his big toe.
Uh-huh.
And this blister became infected. And then it became septic. And Calvin Coolidge Jr. died. And it said that Calvin Coolidge, who by most accounts was one of the most brilliant men to ever sit in the White House, he checked out. He checked out because his son, the joy of his life, his namesake, is gone. Now, a blister on the toe of the president's son caused the president's son to get sick and die.
Right.
Now, if we talk about oneness, the rest of the body is healthy, so this part should not impact anything.
Right.
But unity says that the rest of the body must rush to the defense of the injured part in order for it to survive. Now, for whatever reason, the rest of Cal Jr.'s body did not respond in that way. It responded in oneness, and he died instead of unity. And that's the thing that I want people to get. It's anyway. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, it's about relationships at the end of the day. I mean, you could take it one step further with that, you know. Then Calvin Coolidge, as you said, was.
Oh, you're going there, because that was the missing part. When he checked out, the Great Depression began to unfold.
Exactly.
And he took his hands off the wheel because he lost his son, and that's a normal human response.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see the relationship, how one thing affects, you know, it's a domino effect. That's why in science they talk about correlations more than cause, because they understand that, you know, so people say, well, you know, I know somebody who took the vaccine and 3 days later, 3 weeks later, whatever, they died. So we have a tendency to oversimplify cause and effect and with time, and say if something happens within a short window of time frame, then we have cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
Science doesn't look at it that way. Science looks at it and says, what's the correlation of the vaccine to the disease? Because, you know, they were saying one of the side effects for one of the vaccines, I think the mRNA vaccine was, what is it called where your face droops?
Like Bell's palsy.
Bell's palsy. Yeah, Bell's palsy. So they looked statistically at how many people get Bell's palsy within a year population group. They looked at that percentage. Then they looked at the percentage of people who had taken the vaccine and gotten Bell's palsy, and they were almost exact. So then you could say there's no correlation. Mm-hmm. Not only is there no cause and effect, but there's no correlation between that vaccine and this particular event. When Johnson & Johnson, you know, on the other hand, they paused it because they had 8 cases. And so they were investigating cause, effect, correlation, that kind of stuff. But I just think it's healthier, and this could just be my personal thing, but I think it's healthier to think about, rather than oneness, think about unity in terms of relationships, and how does what I do affect the rest of the system. And if I have an experience of oneness, then I'm going to care about what my actions, my words, my deeds, my thoughts, how it's affecting the whole, right? I don't want to be the blister on the toe. Right.
But I want to throw something out there too, is that we talk about causation and correlation, and those are terms that are recurring in statistics, but there's also something in science in scientific analysis that's called catalyzation. Because not only can something be a cause of something, it could be a catalyst of something.
Sure.
In other words, it contributes to it, but it's not the direct cause of it. Right. And so again, when we're talking about unity versus oneness, you know, we can't talk just about the causation, but we also have to talk about the catalyzation. Is this something that because it was introduced in an otherwise benign situation, that it may have triggered something? It didn't necessarily cause it, but it triggered the reaction that produced the result.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, one of the things people, when we start talking about oneness or unity, whatever, I mean, I think it's important, the distinction.
Yep.
Well, if I do to myself, because we're one, if I do something to you, I'm doing it to myself. Now, if that elevates your ethics, good for you. You know, I read one time somebody, and I wasn't able to verify it, but they said when Jesus said, "Do unto others as you would have done," or "Do unto others as you would to yourself," basically. That it reads, "Do unto others as you do to yourself." In other words, that brings in this idea that don't just treat people the way you want to be treated, but realize when you do something to someone else, you're doing it to yourself
Right.
as well.
Yep.
A different way to look at this, Martin Buber, the Jewish philosopher, he wrote a book called The I and the Thou.
Mm,
And that
I've
had
heard
such
of
a
that.
profound effect on my ethics because he talked about you being as a sentient being, a consistent I, an ego. And I know that's another bad term to use. And
But we talked about that.
spiritual
We
circles,
we did
yeah,
an extensive talk on ego and why ego is not necessarily a bad thing.
right. So the I is you as an ego, and the thou is to recognize that the other person is also an ego that you are relating with.
Mm,
So what he says in the book, and it's brilliant, he says most people tend to relate to an I and an it,
mm,
meaning the person at the grocery store who's checking your bags or whatever, they don't exist as a thou in your thinking. Another fully complete ego and sentient being who has a life. You talked about it a couple times when you talked about your martial arts teacher who asked you to ask, what was it?
600 questions.
600 questions,
Yeah.
and you had that interaction in the grocery store.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what those questions caused you to do, was to stop seeing him as an event that was happening in your life. This person cutting me out in line or whatever and being rude,
Yep.
that's an event. So you went from relating to the I and the event to the I and the thou. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if seeing what you do to others as, if I do it to you, I'm doing it to myself, if that elevates the way you treat people, I think it's a good thing, but I think it's one step. I think a healthier way to look at it, a more compassionate, more loving way to look at it, is what Martin Buber calls the I and the thou.
Well, you know what? Let me throw another one. Let me throw a wrench at you.
Sure.
That the Rastafarians have a concept they call I and I.
Ah,
In other words, there
I was
is
in a
no
Steven
thou.
Seagal movie.
What's that?
No, wait, let me just interrupt you. I don't remember. I got to tell you this because you're martial artist stuff. That's in a Steven Seagal movie where he's dealing with Rastafarians, and they were talking about I and I.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. I thought it was just the guy was. Anyway, I want to learn. Go ahead.
No. The I and I is like you are I as well as I am I.
Ah,
I and I. In other words, I don't see any distinction between you and I. It's I and I. And to me, when I learned that, that was the highest expression of empathy that I could think of, because now I no longer see you as a separate entity. I see you as an extension of me, or me as an extension of you. It's I and I. It's I and I. It's I to I, right? It's a spiritual connection.
right. So then, if we're I and I, then doesn't your burden and your problem and your suffering also become my burden and my problem and my suffering? Which brings me full circle back to my original point. If you are not, and I mean, I get not everybody's going to be a social justice warrior, but if you're claiming to have these I and I oneness experiences, I would really love for someone to explain to me how that doesn't break you, how that doesn't cause you to change who you are, to change your relationship with the world, and to begin to say, like to experience the depth of the suffering of the Native American people, to experience the depth of the suffering of Black people in this country, to experience the depth of the suffering. I mean, one of the reasons I changed my mind on
Women.
yeah, exactly, women. And I was going to say the LGBTQ
Yep, the
community.
LGBTQ. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, I was completely uneducated about, I was completely ignorant when I started my job at the university about the difference between sex and gender. And I thought, it's as simple as plugging something into the wall, right? You got
Right.
to
Male and female, right?
exactly. And
You
so,
either got a pole or a hole. That
yeah, you either got a pole or a hole. So, what's your problem? But until I sat with people who really wrestled with their gender identity and understood them and heard them,
Mhm.
then I felt in those moments the empathy, the compassion, the pain of what they were going through. And I was like, wait a minute, this is an I, this is a thou, this is another ego fully complete within itself that's just like me. And I know this is kind of where the phrase comes from, but for the grace of God, there go I, which I hate because it implies, well, somehow God had more grace on you than he had on this person over here.
Yeah.
But it's the spirit of it, right? You get what I'm saying? And that's what changed my mind on that, because I thought, how can I sit in judgment when I haven't got a clue, right? And oversimplify this situation. And so again, that came out of a change of reference or an experience of oneness and an experience of an I and an I
Mhm.
that touched me to again go back to scripture because that's our background,
Yep.
to be moved by the feeling of another's infirmities. Like I just don't know that we have again the credentials to really talk about oneness if we haven't had those experiences of unity where we are moved by the feeling of the infirmity
Right.
of other people.
And that's not understanding. I think if I were to really distill all the problems of humanity to a thing, to a singularity, that would be it. Not understanding.
Yeah.
In other words, if I'm not willing, and this is something that I said this, and I'm going to tell you something, man. A lot of black folks got pissed off with me when I said this, because I said I want to understand how the white supremacists became the white supremacists, because they weren't born that way. Basically, if you look at children, toddlers playing on the playground,
Absolutely.
they
Absolutely.
don't see color. All they see is another spirit, another soul.
Right.
Somebody has to introduce something to them that causes them to see something else. Um, and when I am unwilling to see it through the other's eyes, then I cannot have the I and I experience. You said I and thou, or thee and thou, right?
Right. Right.
Now we've created this dichotomy, and I don't want to call it a false dichotomy because it's very real. It's very real. The concept of me seeing you as a separate entity is very real. But I believe that the concept of seeing you as an extension of me and me as an extension of you, I believe is just as real. And so in order for me to really experience unity, union, and this was what you were saying in the post the last couple of days, is that how can I say I'm in union with you or I'm in unity with you when I am unwilling to see it through your eyes? I'm unwilling to feel what you feel. I'm unwilling to sit Shiva with you. How can you say that? And so here's the thing. I want to say this, and I'm going to shut up again. It's that Christians like to say, well, Christianity is not religion, it's relationship. I remember back in the days when I was a pastor, when I was a preacher, and that sentence, that statement used to resonate with me.
Yeah.
But now it really, I mean, it grates at me like wiping my ass with sandpaper.
I hope you've never tried that, Derrick.
No, I've never tried it, but it sounds really horrible.
Oh,
Right?
yeah, no, it gets the point across, bro.
It does. But the thing is that I'm if I am unwilling to I can't say, I can't talk about relationship. Well, it's not relationship, it's religion, or it's not religion, it's relationship. No, it's if you say that this is the only way and that it's my way or the highway, then basically you have religion. It's not relationship at all. It's just another form of religion. And that if you say that it's only this way, then that means I don't give a wide enough berth to empathy or compassion to step in between my ego and my manifested self. And so now and again, I go back to the Rastafarian concept that it's I and I. Yeah. I and I. That there is no you, there is only I. Oh my God. I just hit something here. I am. You say I am. That's you. You say I am. I am Aaron. I am Derrick. But we are both I am.
Right.
That's the centrality. And so if I say if I can empathize with not with the Aaron part, but the I am part, that I'm willing to extend empathy to that I am, then it's I and I. It's not I and thou. It's not you and me. It's we. It's us. It's unity and not. But because you're Aaron, you're different.
Right.
And I have to honor that difference.
Right. Right.
I have to embrace the I am, but honor the Aaron.
Right.
Yeah. I hope that makes sense. I'm kind of out there now.
It makes sense to me. I mean, this is the flip side of the coin. You mentioned dichotomy. I think dualism is unavoidable because you cannot have knowledge or relationship without
that's
duality.
Right. And that's another thing too. We need to stop. I'll tell you something. In theological circles, you always hear about this. Well, that's dualism, and we need to eliminate dualism. No, we don't need to eliminate dualism. We need to understand why dualism is and embrace it. Yeah. Because that dualism is essential to our understanding of unity.
Yeah. Because again, I'm going to say this again because this is a hard concept. Because you can't define it because you're taking the infinite and putting limits, defining it. You're taking the infinite, make it finite. The moment you try to define it, you lose it. But to try to help people understand, you cannot have any awareness of anything without duality. Because there has to be the experience and the person who is aware. So Eckhart Tolle, in his book, The Power of Now, he teaches about watching the mind and not identifying with the mind, but watching the mind and realizing that you're the watcher, not the thinker. So if I've got, crazy thoughts going through my head, most people think that's them. I can say this beyond a shadow of a doubt as a therapist. They come in and whatever's running through their mind, I did this and I feel this and I feel that and so what Tolle was teaching, or Tolle, however you say his name, I don't know. I just
Tolle, I think. But yeah, I'm with you. I love that card.
Yeah. You're observing the mind, you're observing the thoughts, you're observing what he calls the pain body. You're not identifying with this. You're not coming in and saying, I am depressed. You're saying something more like I'm experiencing depression. From that perspective, you become the experiencer, but the experiencer is still So actually what he's teaching you to do is create a dualism, a dichotomy
Yep.
between what you're thinking and what you're feeling and who you are at your core identity, but you're still creating an ego. The ego is just no longer the thinker, the ego is the listener. The ego is no longer the pain, the ego is the feeler, but it's still an ego.
Right.
So you cannot have any experience in true oneness, because if it's true oneness, there's no experiencer. So therefore, there's no consciousness of it.
My God.
So we have to embrace duality, or we cease to exist, literally.
Yeah.
We literally cease to exist as the experiencer. We literally cease to exist as the knower. We literally cease to exist in any definable way whatsoever. So we become nothing. That's just logic.
Yeah.
So
there's a book that I'm reading, and I can't remember the title of it. I was looking for my iPad, but it's too far away. But basically, what he was saying is that we have a super consciousness, right? That this super consciousness is what goes on in another dimension, and that's called the local consciousness, right?
yes, yes.
And then the unlocal conscious, which is our life experience. This is our natural experience, that we're simply observing the local consciousness. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, right?
Yeah. Let me flip this around though, Derrick, and get your thoughts on this. And I know
Okay.
we're coming up on the end. It's one thing as me being the perpetrator or the potential perpetrator, to say, if I do this to you, I'm doing it to me. Let's flip that around. Based on that premise, then, does the victim see the perpetrator as them doing that to themselves? So in other words, if a woman is brutally raped, is she supposed to say, like, okay, so let's say my ethic is, if I do it to others, I'm doing it to myself. So if I go out and brutally rape a woman, which I would never do, I'm just trying to come up with an illustration to help people understand.
Yep.
If I go out and do that, and then what stops me is, oh, but if I do that to her, I'm doing that to myself. But let's flip that around. Let's say that happens to her, and then she hears this teaching.
Yeah.
Then is she supposed to say, I did that to myself? That was me raping me. That was me perpetrating violence against me? Because you can't have it. You can't have it one way, but not the other way.
Because if you say oneness, then you say, hey, I did it to myself.
Exactly. And then where does that put a person?
That
psychologically, mentally, emotionally.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's horrible. Because people don't do that. That's victim blaming and victim shaming.
Yeah, but we're doing that in spirituality if we're teaching that we're all one.
Yeah.
We're just only looking at it through the eyes of privilege and power.
But you know what? Here's the thing, right? You talk about oneness, right? So let's talk about like the standard model of quantum physics, right?
Okay.
So let's talk about like a muon, right? A muon is a quantum particle, right? And so is a boson, right?
You're teaching me.
No, but I mean, these are two different particles in the standard model of all we understand to be reality.
Okay.
But a muon, even though it's part of the standard model, is not a boson.
Okay.
Right. So even though, like if a boson does something that impacts a muon, it doesn't mean that the muon is a boson. And in other words, it's not doing it to itself. It's one particle acting on another particle. Or if you talk about a light wave versus, say, a sound wave, right? They're both waves in the unified field, but they're two different types of energy being manifest, right? So the light wave is not a sound wave, and the sound wave is not a light wave. one impacts the other, one affects the other. And even though they're in the unified field, they are of the same energy. They are not the same thing.
Hmm.
So I say all that to say that if, to use your analogy, a woman being raped, horrible thing, right? A woman being raped, and she hears this teaching and says, okay, that means it was me raping myself. No, sister, dear sister, let me speak to you directly. It's not you raping yourself. Okay. There is something that happened to you. And even though it is of the same energy that that you may think, or you may perceive as you projecting out, it's not your energy. It is you are not the cause of this. It is not your responsibility.
Wow.
It is not you doing it to yourself.
Wow, Derrick, I mean, you just kind of made some, and I don't understand. I mean, you understand that quantum physics stuff way, 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 way better than I do. But so just follow my train of thought and help me out, because you just helped me see something. So on one level, we're of the same substance, like you talked about the I am.
Yep.
But on another level, there is differentiation. So you have to embrace both. On a deeper level, the oneness. In other words, we're both of the same energy.
Yep.
But on another level, you have to embrace the duality.
Right.
Right. And so, oh God, I mean, it's hard to comprehend and get your mind around.
Yeah. Doesn't this make your brain hurt?
It does. It's making my brain hurt, man. But then doesn't it make sense? Here's my question. If we try to escape the ego to experience this oneness on that other level, we are rejecting then the duality. Does not that then lead us to live irresponsibly?
It absolutely
If
does.
I don't own my ego, if I don't own my separate self and part, and recognize it and honor it and understand how it operates within the larger context of the whole,
Yep. Yep.
then does that not then, the byproduct of that, cause me to not take any responsibility for who I am or what I'm doing or what's happening in the world? And unfortunately, that's what I see. Because the flip side of this, and we'll have to talk about this in another episode, but the flip side of this is, out of this same sort of teaching comes, well, suffering is all an illusion. Suffering isn't real. It's just happening in the ego.
Oh no,
and,
it's
and,
real.
And non-judgment and all that. But that's not what they're saying. They don't say that. They say it's an illusion.
Suffering is absolutely real. I mean, here's the thing. To say the suffering is an illusion is to deny the human experience.
Yes, and so I think in this paradox of one, which you kind of just like made ding, 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 light bulbs go off in my head when you were talking about quantum physics, even though I've heard of I've heard those terms. Well, the first, I know nothing about it, but whatever you were saying, it makes for me that that if we don't own ourself, if we don't own our ego, if we're not responsible for our ego, if we try to escape our ego and remove our ego and destroy our ego, then we will live irresponsibly and not fulfill our part. And thus then, are we not trading one delusion for another in our search for truth?
So here you said something, right? The whole concept of oneness is then a complete delusion.
Yeah.
Because and this is really helping me, because like one of the things that helped me get out of religion was oneness. I was like, okay, we are one. We are at one. We are at one with creation. We are at one with another, but we're not. We're not. Even though we are in unity,
right,
we are not at one. We are unique and disparate parts. It's just like, let me put it this way. Our bodies are full of organs. We have lungs, heart, liver, kidneys, spleen, pancreas, liver, stomach, intestines. We have all of these different organs. But take one of those organs out and it impacts the entire body.
Right.
Because that organ that was removed is unique. It is not necessary. I mean, it's part of the whole, but it's unique in its function. And if you take it out, the body suffers.
Yeah. So you go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you, Derrick.
No, I was just saying that that we have to get past. Aaron, I'm going to tell you something. This has helped me, because I'm telling you, I was on the oneness tip hard, right?
I was too.
But when I was reading your post, I was like, wait a second, could I be wrong about the whole oneness thing? Could it be that it really has nothing to do with oneness? I mean, could it be? I mean, we are united.
Right.
We are in the unified field of matter, of energy, of light, of power, but we are unique in our manifestation in that field. And so because of that, I have to look at this and say, okay, I'm unified with this, but I'm not necessarily one with this, because I can be taken out, but there are ramifications to me being extracted from this, or there are ramifications to me being inserted in this.
Right.
I mean, dude, it's like when I saw that, God, Jesus, I was like, this is something that we have to talk about.
So the ancients would talk about spirituality in this way. They would go back to the beginning, the structure of creation. This was in my thing that I did on Sunday. That in the beginning, there was total unity, oneness, total oneness. Let me use the right word, oneness, which means it's beyond definition.
Yep.
And then what they would say is that, okay, so let's look at oneness in the beginning, source. We call God source, right?
Yep.
So the source of all things was consciousness, mind. Let's just say that. In the beginning was the Logos.
Yep.
I mean, that fits, that's in Hinduism, that's in Buddhism, that's in
insert your religion here.
Indigenous shamanic stuff,
Right.
that's in the Kabbalah, it's in Gnosticism, and it's in the Bible. In the beginning was mind, Logos.
Yeah.
But this consciousness, so what happened was this consciousness decided to spin off other consciousnesses that would become dualistic, not separate, not independent, but dualistic identities. And we are interacting as one aspect of consciousness with other aspects of consciousness within the context of free will.
Yeah. Okay, so let me throw out something here. I'm going to throw out something really technical, right?
Yeah.
Boolean algebra, right?
You just lost me.
No, this or that, right?
Okay.
And or, right?
Okay.
So there's a fork from every outcome. There is an and an or, right? But if you think about this in the context of what you just said, right? In the beginning, there is a consciousness, and this consciousness spawns off other consciousness, right? And these other consciousness fork their consciousness as in ands and ors.
Yes.
And they spawn further consciousnesses that are ands and ors. And if you look at this in a logic diagram, right? Basically, downward legs, right? This spreads out in ad infinitum.
Yes.
As many possibilities stemming from the same source.
Right.
Jesus.
Right.
Oh
you just brilliantly articulated what Plato was trying to say, what Thoth in Egypt was trying to say, what Hermes Trismegistus was saying, you just brilliantly articulated that, because that's exactly how they would have perceived, or the Gnostics, that's exactly how they would have perceived the universe.
Yeah.
And so the duality, the multiplicity of the universe is a undeniable, unavoidable, and inescapable aspect
Yeah.
of what we are experiencing, because without that, there can be no experience.
Dude, this is my thinker is on fire right now.
Well, I had an experience, Derek, and that's why, you know, I mean, I had an experience, and what do? You know, I mean, it just shifted everything, shifted my frame of reference, and it's hard to give words to it. So, but I thought what you just said, I mean, man, was awesome.
But here's the thing, right? And I want to say this to everybody that's watching, that here's the thing. First of all, because of the uniqueness of the human consciousness, I always say this is my catchphrase: your mileage may vary.
Right.
In other words, just because I see it this way does not mean you're going to see it this way. Right. Just because it manifests this way to me doesn't mean it's going to manifest this way to you. And that even though it manifests this way to me and it manifests that way to you, it doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. It just simply means that we are having an experience.
Right. And it all depends on your frame of reference. So there is no, in this sense, like, topic for another day. I've had people come at me who are speaking up for Black Lives Matter, for speaking out about white privilege, for talking about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and say, well, that's just judgment. And we're so spiritual, we don't judge anymore. You know, we've left non-judgment.
No, bullshit. Sorry.
I think that would be a good topic. But non-judgment for me, because I believe in non-judgment, but non-judgment removes the concept of absolute rightness and absolute wrongness as a dichotomy, as a polarity, and introduces the possibility for frames of reference. And science does this. I mean, we talked about this, you know, a while back, that science doesn't really have facts, they have theories. And most people don't understand that.
Right.
Because they understand that we don't know all there is to know, and so more knowledge may change our theory. But when they come into more knowledge, what they're really coming into is just a different frame of reference. So what I hear you saying, Derek, is your mileage may vary. This is my frame of reference and my experience based on this infinite amount of potential possibilities. And because of duality, because there is not this oneness, then there is an infinite amount of potential possibilities. If there's just oneness, there's no potential for any possibility. There is no law of attraction. There is no fruit. There is no there's nothing that we experience in the phenomenal world.
Right.
So what I hear you saying is, you're coming from your frame of reference, I'm coming from my frame of reference, and we're not putting a value judgment on and saying one's right and one's wrong. We're recognizing that they are different frames of reference based on where we are within the context of this infinite, ever expanding, ever multiplying diversity.
Exactly.
That is expanding from source, which was oneness at one time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like basically when we talk about creation, whether you talk about theology or whether you talk about science, we talk about a singularity.
Yes.
That from this singularity expanded everything.
Yes.
Right? And this is the other thing too, is that I want everybody to understand this, that there are two types of switches, right? There's the switch that's on or off, right? It's this or it's that, right? But there's also a switch that they call a rheostat. A rheostat goes from this to this. And so there's an infinite range of possibilities between this and that, right? And so one of the things that I think that we have to understand in our spirituality is we have to understand the difference between a switch and a rheostat. That some things happen. There's an instant dichotomy. There's an instant distinction. There's an instant duality. And then there are some things that happen on a scale.
Right.
My buddy Matthew DiStefano said this. He said that things happen on a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are some things that happen with a switch. Like if I reach up and turn off this light, it turns off the light. But if I were to turn a dimmer on that light,
Right.
it changes.
Right. Right.
It changes the degree of what I observe. It doesn't change what I observe. It just changes the degree of what I observe. And we need to really understand all of these things. But dude, I wanted to tell you that when I read your post saying, hey, I want you guys to consider what I posted for the last couple of days, because the last couple of days I'm explaining how I had an experience that told me that it's not about oneness. And when I read that, I was just like, dude, the British term is gobsmacked. I was gobsmacked I was like, holy fuck, this is brilliant. And so I said, this was something. So when I sent the text out to you earlier, I'm like, dude, this is what we got to talk about, because there are so many people that they're caught in this instant duality, right? It's like right now, right now, this is the change. It's this or it's this, but it's not always this or this. Sometimes it's this or this.
Right. Right. Yeah. So Brittany Hill just mentioned the Kabbalion, and they talk about, he's talking about the law of rhythm in the Kabbalion, but there's also the law of polarity, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I've that part of it, but and what they would say is that what you're talking about with the dimmer switch is that it's all one thing, but the experience of it is on degrees of polarity.
Yep.
And so it's not that oneness doesn't exist. It's just that oneness is what we came from. We're all made of one thing.
Well, think about this. If I can hopefully simplify what you're saying, is that oneness is the beginning. Oneness is the beginning. We all came from a single point. We all came from a singularity. But from that singularity are many forks.
Yes.
And so with many forks come many possibilities. And this is the thing that I'm trying to get people to understand, is that when you say, listen, for all of you Christians out there that say that Jesus is the only way, you have committed to well, let me put it this way. You've committed to a constrained dichotomy. I'm not saying the dichotomy doesn't exist. What I'm saying is that from my standpoint, from where I sit, there are many possibilities, many options, many paths. And if you can embrace that, then at that point, you begin to experience a different level of reality, because now you're not stuck in any one path. That this is not the only way, that this is a way.
Dang it, man. So basically what you're saying is, if we're Jesus only, and I'm not talking about the Trinity, I'm talking about Jesus is the only way, we are denying the very reality of existence. We're denying the entire thing. Because here's what's so exciting about this. Like I don't want people to get bummed about this. This is what's so exciting about this, that because of this duality, this multiplicity, maybe is a better word, infinite potential possibilities for experiences exist for us. And maybe part of what we're doing is traversing different lifetimes, maybe different universes, maybe different realities, maybe different dimensions.
Yeah.
Experience an infinite amount of experiences. And maybe evolution is all about learning how to have the highest quality experiences that we can have within the abyss
Yeah.
of infinite unmanifested potentiality.
Dude, you know, in real estate, there's this term called best and highest use.
Yes.
That in other words, you're trying to find the best and highest use of any parcel of land for, you know, for some purpose. And dude, this is it. It's all about, it's not about that this is the only way, but what is the best and highest possible use?
Yeah. And in order to experience that, you have to compare and contrast.
And you have to have duality.
Yep.
Dude.
We're onto something.
Oh man, you know what? I'm gonna tell you something. Every time we sit down and we talk, I always come away saying, God, this was the best one that we ever.
Well, in my book, this is the best one we've ever done.
in my book too, this is it. I mean, we, you know, it's like we could, well, I won't say you, but I could die tomorrow and be completely satisfied.
Just like fine wine or a good scotch, man, it just ages nicely.
Speaking of that, I think that that while I still have a lot of old fashioned mix left, I'm gonna go out on the patio and smoke a cigar.
Hey, sounds good to me. I don't have any, but it sounds good to me.
but hey, you know what? I have a whole humidor. I think
kidding
that
me?
I mean it's a small one, but I think that I have about 40 cigars still
Derrick
in there.
Day, I cannot wait to come visit you
I know,
because
man. I can't wait to come visit you. Either or.
you're a foodie like me. You like good drinks. You have a humidor. Your wife specializes in cannabis or something, doesn't she?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, dude, you are like the party that is waiting to happen. Talk about potential possibilities.
Listen, man, I'm telling you, my sister talked to me and she said, you guys need to go to Oprah, go to whomever and pitch a show. You know,
Yeah.
she said, because you guys are brilliant. But she wasn't the only one. I mean, I've had like 4 or 5 people saying, hey, this needs to be an actual TV show.
Wouldn't that just be the shit?
It would be. It would be. I mean, it's like me and you in a studio audience, man, that would be off the fucking chain.
Dude, that might be a potential possibility that's out there, except we'll have to curb our cussing.
No, we wouldn't. No, because like now that you got Netflix, man.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Absolutely right. But I mean, how politically incorrect been doing it for years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like we could be all out, man.
Dude, let's put that out there. Let's start let's manifest that. That would be awesome.
You know what? I'm gonna speak it in unison with you. I'm putting it into the universe that we are going to do a show and this will be syndicated and it will be off the fucking chain.
All right, man. Derrick Day, I love you. You're my brother. I just can't say enough good about you, man. Thank
Aaron,
you.
I love you too. And to everybody out there, may you be happy, may you be well, and may you be filled with peace. We love you.
Love you.
All right.